Members and officers to this meeting of Cabinet Committee Corporate Parenting, which due to health and safety reasons is being held virtually. The meeting is recorded and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as is practicable following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be accessing this meeting from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that mobile phones are switched off or to silent mode. Members will have received an electronic copy of the agenda. I will ask officers to present a summary of the key points. For the record, the agenda can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their cameras on at that point. But I would ask that, with the exception of myself as the chair, at all other times you keep your cameras and microphones switched off, as this will help to minimise any background noise and interference and to ensure that the connections remain as stable as possible. If any members or officers wish to raise a point or a question, they should press the hands up icon on the screen hand at the top right-hand screen, right-hand side of the Microsoft Teams window, and I will come to you in the order I receive requests. Please lower your hand once you have finished speaking. The chat button has been disabled for this meeting. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting and will be monitoring the use of microphones throughout the meeting. Where necessary, we'll mute those not being used. I would also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. They too should ensure microphones and cameras are switched off when not in use. And I will now proceed to the agenda business. So, first item on the agenda this morning is apologies for absence. Can I have any that have been recorded, please? Right, bear with me while I open up the hands. So, Councillor Thomas.
Not so much an apologies for non-attendance. I'm afraid I have to leave about 11 o'clock, if that's okay.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Thomas. Do we have any others recorded? No. Right, shall we move swiftly on? Any declarations of interest from any members or officers in attendance, please? No. Brilliant. Agenda item number 3, approval of the minutes from the 27th of the 7th, 2022. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move, Chair.
Right, so
I'll second as well. It's fine.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Blundell and Councillor Good. Number 4, moving on to the approval of the statements of purpose for residential services. Claire, are you going to introduce this?
Deputy Leader, it's going to be Stephen Howell, the Group Manager, who's going to take us through these reports.
Oh, I do apologise, I didn't see him there. Steve, do you want to carry on?
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and my apologies for being so quiet in the background there. So first of all, so I've shared a report which sets out the reason why we review and the statements of purpose for the residential children's homes each year, and then present them to Corporate Parenting Committee. In terms of the general updates that we've completed for all of those statements of purpose. So I think there are some specific areas, small specific areas that are detailed within the report, and obviously the statements of purpose are appended to that report. But I think in terms of general overhaul and changes we've made across all of them is, first of all, we recognised that many of the photos were from many years ago, and so we thought it would be helpful to update those to show some of the, to reflect the homes as they currently are. One of the big changes we wanted to make was in one of the paragraphs around physical interventions or use of control and restraint is it talks about it references restraint in the previous statements of purpose, and we felt that didn't fully set out the work that we do when we do have to use that form of intervention, and we've changed that to the use of the term physical intervention on all of the statements for purpose. And then we've also looked at the sort of requirements of staff to register with Social Care Wales and updated that in line with the staffing qualifications within each of the children's homes, because obviously that can be quite a fluid situation, but we have updated all of those to reflect the current staffing. And also we're following on from sort of advice from inspections, is to look at some of the specific training that we would and detail some of the specific training that we would expect of staff members within each of the children's homes to be accessing and to be completing in order for them to be fully able to undertake their roles within each of the specific houses. That does include things like within the children with disability settings, some very specific communication training, such as the use of PECs and sign along. And also then looking at some of the training around TRIBE, which would support our staff to fully understand the model intervention they've been expected to use within Mapletree House, for example. And similarly, we want to echo that across Sunnybank to ensure that, and it will be at the new pop-up when we open that, in order to ensure that we've got a staff team who are all practicing in the same way with young people. So if they move within our residential homes, then they'll be working with a staff team, a consistent approach to how we support children and young people who are in our care. So I think as I said, there are some small minor changes within each of the individual statements of purpose, which are detailed in the report, and I'd be happy to answer any queries or questions people might have in relation to those, if that would help. Sorry, you're on mute, Count.
Oh, well, there we are. That's my first one of the day. So thank you very much. Can I invite members to raise their hands should they have any questions? But I also want you to pass on my thanks, and particularly this committee's thanks, Steve, to all the staff, because I'm very conscious that they work with some very difficult, challenging, emotive and lovely children, I want to say, irrespective of their problems. You made reference to reframing of terminology from restraint to behaviour, physical management. I'm very conscious, having a background that I do, that a restraint can be a come along, and that's just a touch between the shoulder and the elbow. And that is classed as physical intervention for those members who are not so familiar with the terminology. A restraint or behaviour management does not necessarily mean that you are completely isolating a young person's limbs, so to speak. But does anybody have any questions, or are you all happy to approve? And take note of the comments. Wow, you got off lightly today, Steve.
Obviously a well-written report.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do appreciate
you all very
that.
much.
All right.
Yeah, take care all. Thank you.
And you. Thanks very much. Bye-bye. Members, I am assuming you're happy to note the content of that report.
Yeah, good for me, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So shall we move? Oh, Councillor David, leader.
Yeah, sorry, it was remiss of me. I should have raised it while Steve was still here. I'm assuming that with Hillsborough Place that we'll, and apologies if it was in the report, but we'll receive a subsequent and further report when that provision is registered around the statement of purpose and approving that. Thanks, Chair.
I would assume so, because it hasn't been registered yet. We wouldn't have that approval as yet, so we wouldn't be able to share that with members. Claire?
Hi, it's Laura. So yeah, I can confirm that we're still in the process of applying to register Hillsborough. So as part of that process, we have to submit a statement of purpose. And what we will do is for our next committee, we're bringing inspection reports on all of our residential settings. And I would suggest, I anticipate that we will have Hillsborough registered by then. We can bring that statement of purpose for further comments then. And if there are any amendments that are required, we can update the statement of purpose accordingly and update update that on the CIW portal. That's not a problem. And then that statement of purpose will be reviewed annually in line with all our other statements of purpose, and will come to this committee for further comments in the future as well.
I noticed your thumbs up, Leader. I'm assuming that you're happy with that response. Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks, Laura. Councillor Thomas?
Thanks, Chair. Just likewise, is there any update on the, I forget the name of the site, but the old Bremennin Primary School site?
Laura?
Yeah, okay. Yes, the works are still sort of underway up at Bremennin, and the aim is for completion by next spring. So April 2023 should be when the building works are completed, and we should be able to go live with the service at Bremennin. And there is still work underway with staff and children and young people to decide on a name for that service as well. So it's called Bremennin Hub at the moment in terms of a project, but the name of the actual house where the children will live is still under discussion at the moment, and we're engaging with children and young people who've experienced residential care in those decisions.
Thanks, Laura. Claire?
Yeah, Claire Marchant, Corporate Director of Social Services and Wellbeing. Just to say that there's a project which Laura chairs, which is overseeing the development of that new assessment service. I think it's important to say that whilst the build is important, the other elements of that project are equally important, if not more so, in terms of our workforce model. In terms of the way that the service is going to operate. We're looking to progress very much this as a partnership service, and we've submitted a proposal to Welsh Government to support that service, given the policy agenda, which is very clear here in Wales around eliminating profit. So we've submitted a proposal which we're anticipating that we'll get some response to quite shortly from Welsh Government, which includes embedded education provision, working with the Health Board about psychology led interventions into that provision, as well as being a social care provision. So really exciting and a really good development for us, but just everything crossed in terms of that submission coming back positively for us.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Thomas, are you happy with that response?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, brilliant. Does anybody have any more questions in relation to this? No. So before I move, I'll move on then to an update on the corporate parenting development. Agenda item number 5. You can find this report from pages 119 to 124. And if I could invite Steve Berry to present the report, please, Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's Steve Berry, Corporate Parenting and Participation Officer. With regards to the report, it's an update report, so no requests or specific recommendations, only for your information and any queries and questions with regards to the content. Basically, with regards to the development, first and foremost, the establishment on a shared vision of corporate parenting responsibilities. We've held 2 events between now and the last meeting. The first event was to engage with children and young people, our care experienced young people and our care leavers at Bringarrow on a consultation and engagement event. And I'll provide you with a specific presentation in a moment with regards to that, where you will hear the voices of our young people explaining the issues with regards to particular topics. The second event was held at the High Tide in September for multi-agency strategic officers to take heed and note of the points that young people made from the consultation event at Bringarrow, and also to come together and recognise their responsibilities and look to shape up some key areas of work that will feed into the first corporate parenting board that will be held on October the 26th, later in this month. I must note my previous paper in the last meeting talked of the Corporate Parenting Operational Group. That is now being returned to the Corporate Parenting Board. And that is specifically because we want to make sure that we have the appropriate representation of agencies at that meeting, and that it is at a strategic level. With regards to the updates on the governance, as I've mentioned, we will be holding the Corporate Parenting board, and at that meeting we will have terms of reference hopefully agreed and any amendments made. The membership of that corporate parenting board is cited within the report there for yourselves. No doubt at that meeting we hopefully will have some extra suggestions from board members that may have been omitted in the first glance, and also at that meeting we will be citing membership and representation at subgroups for each of the priorities. So the priorities are having a voice, good health and well-being, a comfortable, safe home in and after care, for children and young people to have educational achievement, training and employment, be ready for independent living, and finally celebrating our children and young people milestones. So those are the 6 key areas of which we're going to look at, and the suggested terms of reference is that we'll have subgroups attending to each of those priorities. In addition to that, we will also have a data group, which moves me on to the performance framework. The request has gone to Children's Services and to Trosgannol, our advocacy service, to provide what we have currently on recorded data in respect of our care experienced young people and also our care leavers, so that we have our baseline picture currently from those 2 providers. But obviously, as I stated, this is about the responsibilities of all agencies coming together for our care experienced and our care leavers. So with that baseline information, we will be asking board members what additional things that they would like to know that both Trosgannol and Children's Services will be able to provide, but also to ask themselves and one another, what data will they have? So for example, the health board will have a tranche of information on our care experienced young people, of which no doubt we will all want to know how we are faring as parents and how well we are doing and how we can achieve the best outcomes for our young people. So moving on from the actual board then, the last thing to update you with is the establishment of care experienced forums to provide our children and young people with a collective voice. So part of my role will always be about how individuals can have their voice heard in their plans and in their meetings, and I'll be working with Children's Services and other agencies to ensure that there are better improved communication tools. One of the things that we fall short of a bit is technology, so we most definitely need to work with that, and that's one of the messages the young people have come up with in consultations. But with regards to the forums, Trosgannol were awarded the contract for 12 months with a possible extension to 18 months. If we were to extend to 18 months, that will fall in line with their regional contract with us as an advocacy provider. But what I must stress is this is about a specialist participation contract, not advocacy. But the benefit of us having them as the awarded contract is that they have the voice of our young people in a thematic way, that where they provide advocacy for our young people as a collective, they can look at patterns. So the suggestion is that they will be bringing to the youth forums for the young people a collective list of issues that children have come to them about, and then they will ask the forums. So there are 2 age forums, this one 12 to 18 and then another 16 to 25, an overlap for young people who might not feel comfortable to jump to the older group. And basically the advocacy provider will share the patterns and thematics with the young people to ask them, is this something they've experienced, and what recommendations can we make back to board to improve these circumstances? So not only do young people individually have access to advocacy, we will also be looking at a thematic across the piece. The other role of the youth forum will be to be able to provide their suggestions of how things can be improved in Children's Services and all of the support services that they provide from multi-agencies. And then finally, that last approach will be where either yourselves as this corporate cabinet committee or the corporate parenting board or our multi-agency organisations would like to consult with our care experience and care leaver young people, we would be looking to provide those requests to those forums. So there's lots of opportunities to hear the voice of these young people, and each forum will be meeting once a month from November and they're on in afterwards. So if I may, Mark, if you're able to give me permission as a presenter with regards to showing the media clips, which are basically the voice of our young people at the consultation event. Members will be unable to hear some of the issues that young people had. So I've enabled sound.
Technical challenge too, Steve.
Have a thumbs up, please, Chair, if you can hear. Thank you.
What can adults do to make sure you have?
Children in care should have easy access to a gym membership or fitness groups with other care kids like them.
Adults and co-parents can ensure we have good physical exercise by giving a gym membership or help finance it.
Going on more bike rides and swimming.
What can adults do to make sure you have?
Adults can monitor our health and make sure we eat.
You need to put your mic back on, Steve.
Sleep and get all the appointments needed.
Adults could check that we are having our regular checkups at your local GP to make sure you are having a healthy diet.
Someone to talk to me about being healthy and eating better.
Having access to places, walk in nature with wildlife is important because it makes me feel calm.
What can adults do to make sure you have?
Adults should keep track of feelings and help understand hormones and give us that someone to talk to if necessary.
Talk to me more when things are going well.
Adults should make sure things are said that people might need to hear, like words of affirmation.
How can adults listen to your views and consider your feelings?
At home, for us to feel listened to and have our feelings considered is for adults to have an open mind and include our wishes in their decision making.
Carers at home should take in how young people feel and look out for their facial expressions to notice how their kids are feeling.
How can adults listen to your views and consider your feelings?
Co-parents should be very open-minded to making us feel home, welcome and loved, and to gain our trust so we are able to continue a good relationship.
Adults should ask how your day was and earning trust and feeling safe with them sharing them.
If any of the adults have time off work, they tell me so I know.
How can adults listen to your views and consider your feelings?
When teachers get angry, it makes me frustrated and I feel not listened to. I don't feel listened to in school. I wish teachers wouldn't shout because it makes me want to shout.
In school, the adults should be considering our life at home and how it can impact on us to help us with school without getting on a bad term and going downhill.
I would like it if I am spoken to more about what college course I do next.
How can adults listen to your views and consider your feelings?
Carers should listen to your worries about your health and make an appointment to make sure you are healthy and well.
Adults need to understand our feelings about appointments and make sure we feel safe and make sure we know when and where to go when the appointment is.
Sometimes I want to book my own appointments and go by myself.
How can adults listen to your views and consider your feelings?
Adults should attend parents' evenings about how your child's doing at school and congratulate them, also giving them feedback that would offer your child confidence.
I would like more help to look at options for jobs and go to open days.
Co-parents should think about our future and teach us life skills and set us on education, but also have time out with them and understand that it could be affecting their emotions.
How can adults listen to your views and consider your feelings?
When there is something big in my life, people ask me what I think. My PA is really good at helping me with this.
Adults could ask us questions and get us ready for the obstacles in life. Adults could ask about your hopes and dreams and help you achieve those ambitions to help you in the future.
Our views and our wishes could be heard more by adults by including and letting us make decisions and options in our life to learn.
What help do you need to get these services?
Having all information in one place, like a website or something.
I need to have data on my phone so I can check information like train times.
We need help to get these services by information, education and free transport and payment for needed things.
If you ever had to move away and you had joined a club that you would still like to attend, then you will need to organise transport. If you'd like to catch a bus, you will need money to buy tickets, so your carer will need to get money options ready for you.
To be given a bus pass, told about more clubs outside of school, more support to living alone and talking about rent.
What do you expect from these services?
I expect to have good education, a good job and independence to go and live a life when grown up.
What does being safe mean to you?
Safe means warm and cared for and also loved.
Being loved, cared for, and having a roof over your head is important.
When I need help, I go to my mum or a trusted loved one or teacher. Or, if I need information, I go to my phone.
Being safe means that you are being cared for well and being happy within your community.
What is important to you about your home life?
Fun activities that would help with bonding and understand each other well.
Adults need to make sure you have a healthy home life, which may help the relationship as it grows stronger and gets closer.
You need to know how not to burn the house down.
What is important to you about the relationships you have with other people?
I think it is important you should have contact with old friends and making sure they're okay.
Knowing my friends are safe is important to me.
It's important that I get listened to by my co-parents and respected.
I think that being able to understand and bond with each other is important.
What is important to you about school or college?
Being listened to in school and respected is important. There needs to be more choice for us with subjects in school, especially when not in mainstream.
I'd like teachers to be more friendly. That would make me want to work harder.
Patience is important in school. I feel teachers need more.
Grades are very important to me. It would help with certain jobs in the future.
Having a choice of subject should be for everyone, not just for mainstream. We should all be respected the same.
What is important to you about your job or working?
It's important to be polite and welcoming at work, so it's a nice experience, not a bad one.
What skills do you need to live on your own?
To live on your own, I think you should be able to manage money and food.
We need independent skills on money, food, health, to be able to live alone wealthy.
What things do you need to know to manage on your own?
We need to manage to cook, clean and carry needed items with us.
What other life skills might you need to be able to know about or do?
In school, we learn about important things like making money, respect and routines, which will help you in the life. Having the confidence to order a meal is a good skill to have. It's useful to know how the world revolves around you, how to pay bills and bank accounts.
You need to know how to set up a bank account and do your everyday essentials.
We need other life skills like hobbies or helping others, which is also kindness.
What are the things children in care should have to create positive childhood memories?
Children in care should have photos and memories to create a positive childhood.
Being able to attend raves.
Be able to go swimming or to rugby matches.
I think children in care should be able to go on holiday and have more life choices.
I wish I had more choices about things in my life.
What achievements should be recognised and how should they be celebrated?
It should be recognised if I work hard.
Achievement that means that we are doing good by ourselves or others should be celebrated by a well done and a little treat.
How should birthdays be celebrated?
A birthday is a special day. I should have a choice how to celebrate it.
I think you should celebrate your birthday by doing nice things, such as having family over, going to nice places, and having birthday cakes.
A card from my social worker should always be a choice.
A card from anyone would be nice. It shows that they care about us.
I think everyone should have a card and money to say happy birthday from their social workers.
Birthdays should be celebrated like normal. We should allow sleepovers, but in care we are not allowed friends in overnight, which is very annoying.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thanks very much, Steve. Before I invite members to accept the report, what I want to say is that I think for me, just as chair of corporate parenting and with my responsibility, what I want to say is how much I enjoyed the event, the partnership event. But it wasn't just about enjoying talking to other stakeholders, but actually we made some really good connections and we made some promising developments. I think that we all acknowledge that resources across all stakeholders are not being utilised as effectively as we could for the benefit of our young people. And actually, I think we also need to share with the committee that the words no still happens with the voice of our children in care. It's not all about saying yes to them, because sometimes as a good parent, the answer is no. But can I ask members to endorse the report, because it is just for noting, and then I'll bring in some questions because other people want to comment. So let me have a look and see who's first on my list. Councillor Good.
I muted and unmuted myself there. It's mad skills. Yes, I'm happy to accept the report. I just wanted to reflect, if I could, on some of it. As one of the councillors that attended the event at Input Call, I must say it was a really, as the Deputy said, it was a really eye-opening event. I think it was really great in giving me certainly a deeper understanding of the children we care for, some of the challenges they face, some of the things that we could be doing to make their lives a little bit more normal, I guess would be the phrase I'd use. And I would thoroughly encourage members on this meeting to come along to any future event they do. I think it was a real shame that actually we only had 3 members from the council who attended the meeting. Obviously, we all have very time-consuming schedules, but it was a really important event. I think being a corporate parent is something we need to pay more attention to as councillors, and I'd hope that in future we can get more along, because it was a shame seeing just me, the DEP and the leader being able to attend. But I really want to thank Steve and Claire and the team for it. It was really impressive. I really enjoyed it, and it was really worthwhile. It was really great hearing from the practitioners and hearing the voices from the children as well. So thanks for that, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Good. Can I invite Mark Shepherd in to speak, please?
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make a couple of points, if I may. First of all, I thought that was incredibly helpful and informative, and perhaps gave us all an indication of the kind of things that we as a committee should be looking at to ensure that the services and the assistance and the help that we provide to our care experienced children is as good as it can be. So I suppose my first question, Steve, is how do we capture all of that, and how do we ensure as an action plan or whatever is required to make sure that we don't lose all of that input? And I'll ask another one then, and then you can perhaps respond to both. And the second was back to your original report, really, in the presentation, which I suppose what I'm seeking, I think it'd be helpful for all the committee, is clarity really about the relationship between what we're now calling the board and this committee. So I suppose originally it was called the operational group, which implies one thing. It's now called the strategic board, which implies perhaps slightly different. And I suppose I just want to understand the relationship between this group, because equally I would suggest this group would also benefit from relevant performance information and necessary data really to ensure that we can make the right decisions and the right investments for those children. Is that clear? Does that make sense to you?
100%, thank you. So first and foremost, what I wanted to do is ensure a strict governance around how we approach corporate parenting so that it's sustainable and it's demarcated within the calendar. So this particular meeting meets on a quarterly basis. The board is meeting straight after this meeting, and then we'll meet 4 weeks before the next meeting. And the purpose of that is that any suggestions, recommendations or approvals will come from this committee, and then we'll go to the papers and reports of the board. The board will then also at the same time hear a data report once we approve a data report card, and then that will kick off the activity for the coming 6 weeks, whereby there will be subgroups to the themes that you heard on those priorities. They will all work within that, primed with any recommendations from this committee and the board. They will then undertake that work, report back to board, and at that point, I will then write a report from board to this committee in the following quarter. The reason why it's gone from operational to a board is that we really need to gain that commitment at high level from every other agency. So what we were very conscious of is 100% there are workers out there that work with our care experience, our care leavers, who are essential to their care and support. However, those resources could quite easily fall by the wayside because of any sort of money constraints in that organisation. If we have the buy-in and commitment at the top strategic level, i.e. that their members are sitting on that board, they will see all of the data, they'll see the importance, and they'll recognise their responsibilities. And more especially, they'll be held to account just as members are held to account in a safeguarding board. So that's the principle behind that. With regards to the governance as well, of course, this is the council, which does have direct resource implications for council staff and the resources within it, but we needed to pull in that resource for wider agencies, and that's why we wanted to go at that level. So then with regards to how do we, your first question, how do we ensure that all of these points are taken on board, and how do we work through it? Within the terms of reference, we've cited the 6 priorities that are in the report, and there will be 5 subgroups and a 6th subgroup being the data subgroup. Each of those subgroups will determine from the list of what young people have said, plus in addition to that, all of the comments and points made by multi-agency professionals at the event in September, we'll have a workshop session within the first board meeting for an hour, where we will break down what the young people have said, what professionals have said to deal with that, and then from that we will have an action plan for each individual subgroup. The data will also be questioned as to how do we measure this, how do we know we're improving outcomes, and over time we're looking at sort of effectively 2 subgroup meetings. So by the new financial year, we will have an established list of objectives. The priorities each will have their own action plan, and that will be drawn up into a strategy, which is hoped to be signed off for April financial year. So then that will probably be a 3-year plan. And obviously that will come back to the governance of this meeting. So the intention is, in short, everything is going to be drawn up within the board. Then subgroups are going to go away finite detail. They will come back to that board, and then that board, through myself, will be writing a report to the next committee.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chair. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Claire?
Yeah, thanks very much, Steve. A couple of points from me. The first, I think, just to acknowledge that it's really important that this Cabinet Committee hears the voice, and hearing that sort of video, as I call it quite old-fashionedly, I think really important, because it keeps us very grounded in terms of what this Cabinet Committee is here to do, and really important, I think, a positive development that contract now with Trosgunnel plant, Steve, and that gives us the vehicle, doesn't it? Because engagement and involvement doesn't happen by osmosis. It needs to be planned. It has to be done very carefully in terms of that. I think you answered one of the points I was going to make, really, in terms of the governance. It's really important that as a county borough and with partners, that we have a strategy for our care experienced children, for corporate parenting, which sets out our responsibilities, sets out our priorities, and sets out pledges, really, of what key partners seek to do. Because I was very struck the last time, and again today, about how low the aspiration of many of our care experienced children are to receive a birthday card, to be able to have a sleepover. These are basics, aren't they, of experience growing up, and if that's the level of aspiration, we really need to challenge ourselves about why that in some cases isn't happening, and how as partners we can unblock the blockages that is happening for our care experienced children. You mentioned resources, and resources are obviously very challenged, but across the county borough there are massive resources across partner agencies, and that was the energy in the room at the high tide, wasn't it, that everybody was trying to look at what they could bring to the party and how they could make a change for the better, and that's critical, isn't it, that we draw on those wider community assets, as well as think that everything requires additional investment from statutory partners. There may be some of that, but far wider about those connections, really. I think the data is critical, that there is really good practice guidance out there, as we know, from the Social Services Improvement Agency, which sets out the information and data that corporate parenting committees should be seeing. So I think we should commit that we do have, even if it's a baseline data report, that should be coming through the strategic board and up to this committee. And I think in terms of final point around governance, we will see changes at some point coming through from Welsh Government around statutory responsibilities of key partners, won't we? So at the moment, corporate parenting is our statutory responsibility. Welsh Government have been working for some time around this, and that will be realised at some point. But they need to act as if it is statutory, even if it's not. So those were just the points I wanted to make, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'm conscious that there's a financial implication, and I've got no more hands up, but I do need members to approve and say, well, Councillor Good has approved, but I do need a further member to second. Councillor David?
Yeah, happy to second, Chair. I just wanted to reflect on the role of partners, and I also was pleased by the positivity at the event that we held with partners in Porthcawl, and I can see that we've obviously reflected that in the makeup of the board to ensure that there's a range of partners there. But what is going to be important is to monitor that to ensure that that commitment is maintained, it's sustained, and it is at the right level. So I noticed there are different levels of, I'm trying to think of a different term to seniority, but I can't think of a different term to seniority. Seniority of the of partners there, and sometimes it is appropriate to have representatives who are closer to the front line, because potentially that can make a bigger difference. And then other times it's more appropriate to have leaders from the very top of an organization, but that isn't always possible. But I think what is important is that we monitor that carefully, because what we can't do is let it become just a meeting of council representatives, and I know that Deb won't let that happen. But we'll need to we'll need to keep a careful eye on that, because actually I think that's probably where we need to make the biggest differences around the role of some of our partners, and if there's anything that we need to do collectively, then I'm sure that's something that we can pick up with partner agencies. But we're going to hold the first few meetings first to see how that progresses, don't we? So happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just to reassure you, I have no intention of letting stakeholders get away with anything. And what I would further state is that actually, if they're there, they need to be able to make some decisions on behalf of their organisation, or it's a bit of a pointless and thankless task. Alex, did you want to contribute to anything?
No, I just joined the meeting. I'm here with Mark Lewis in relation to, I think, the next agenda item. So.
Okay, thanks very much. Can you switch your camera off for a second, please? Thanks very much. Steve, thanks very much for all your work. As you can imagine, I appreciate it immensely. But thank you very much to members, and thank you very much for today.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, if we move on to agenda item number 6, Educare Services. Lindsay, do you want to introduce the report, or is it Alex?
Thanks, Chair. With your permission, Mark Lewis is going to talk us through this report, and myself and Alex will be here to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, lovely. Thanks very much.
Morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues.
Good morning, Mark.
How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
Good, good. Are you happy then for me to go through the report?
Over to you, yes.
And then we'll move to sort of Q&A. So what you've got in your pack there, so I'm going just for clarity. So Mark Lewis, Group Manager, Family Support. What you have in your pack from page 125 down is a report linked to Educare Services. So you'll see the purpose of the report is essentially to give the committee an update on the work of that service. So I'll give you a little bit of background. Many colleagues will be cited on Educare Services, and it's one we're very proud of in Bridgend. I think it's got to be said at the outset. There's a range of sort of accolades and real sort of good critique really of the service from regulators. But you'll see in terms of background, the service isn't a big service. There's 24 staff in total, which sounds significant, but when you look at the sort of range of support it offered, it isn't really that significant. But the Educare Services is an umbrella term really for intensive interventions across a variety of teams and services. And you can see in 3.1 of the report the composition of the team, from social workers to health practitioners, family support workers and so forth. I think 3.2 summarises the essence of the service. It supports families, children, young people and families who are essentially open to children's social care with acute or high complex needs. Now that umbrella term of Educare Services, underneath that there's a range of teams. Now Connecting Families has been around I was actually involved probably 12 years ago or more in terms of its inception, really, and it was something to work with complex families, really, with a variety of needs. And you can see in 3.3 of the report the composition of that team, and you can see in 3.4 that Connecting Families offers intensive intervention up to six months, really, but on a one-to-one basis. And that referral pathway is through social workers, obviously, who are concerned about that child or family. Baby in Mind, that's one really for us to shout about. We received the social care accolade back in 2020 for what's a very creative, innovative service. Work with colleagues very closely in children's social care to meet what was a gap really in service need. You can see what the team consists of in terms, it's not a big team, but that provides intensive support there in terms of where there's a risk of the baby in essence becoming accommodated by the local authority. And there's lots of work we're actually doing with the Parent and Infant Foundation, really linked to rolling that out as a model rather, a good practice across Wales as part of the Early Years Transformation Programme, but a service and a team we should rightly be proud of. Intensive Family Support Service then, I'll only summarise these. You go back to the Social Services and Wellbeing Act, it's part 9 there, it's set out in terms of a statutory requirement for an integrated family support service. Tends to be caught up with that sort of toxic trio where you've got substance misuse, domestic abuse and mental health intertwined, not exclusive. But in 3.8 of the report, you can see it's that focus really on parental trauma, which is being drawn out and actually working with the parents there in terms of some of the challenges they're presenting with. Rapid response then moving forward. Again, you can see the team composition. It's a crisis intervention. I guess the giveaways in the title. 24 hours really looking at receiving a referral when a family have experienced a trauma or have been thrown into a crisis. And then we've got a dad support team. And these are intertwined, really. This team in particular works closely with Connecting Families because we only got the one dad's worker, a family support worker, and a senior who oversees that. But that's specifically to work with fathers who have been identified as the main carer, or fathers who are struggling really to take, as it says there, an active role in their child's life. Another service, which is a new service we're very proud of, is RISE. Committee members and colleagues may be cited on a model that was referred to as PAUSE in England, and this is where we've got repeat sort of pregnancies really and the removal of that child. So it offers practical support, this service, new service around emotional and therapeutic support. And you can see in terms of the narrative there, again, based on that trauma recovery model. So moving then to section 4 of the report and some of the data, which I think is impressive, if I say so myself. Last 5 years prevented over 92% of children entering into the care system for at least 12 months then following the intervention. And if we look at more recent data in 4.2, Educare Services in Bridgend, again, must stress a relatively small resource, but supported 827 children since that time and families, and overall 94% have been prevented from becoming care experienced following at least 12 months following that intervention. I won't take colleagues through the table, happy to take questions obviously at the back end, but the data supports some of that narrative in table 1. And then 4.3 of the report is just really a summary of work Alex and the team are doing around Educare Services, and now they're starting to collate whether there's an intervention and the family repeat referrals in essence. That's what that's saying in 4.3. Taking colleagues through then, conscious there's a lot in this report, but another service that's grown sort of exponentially really is that around family group conferencing. So you can see in 4.4 of the report, the service provision and investment of that service with colleagues in children's services, children's social care has quadrupled since March 2021 to over 100 family group conferences per year. And we're seeing that as a model of good practice, really, in terms of identifying families to go through that intervention. A significant one for us, and I think I know, Chair, you and I have talked previously in different environments around the importance of staff in this. Without the staff and without the investment in the staff, then clearly these interventions can't be delivered. So there's significant investment in staff in terms of evidence-based intervention training, induction and training plans, and there's a variety of bullet points which I won't go through that are listed in 4.5 to support staff so they feel confident in delivering that intervention, both in terms of supervision, reflective practice, training and so forth. 4.6 of the report, Alex and the team are now working on a different model around feedback from families. So I wouldn't want colleagues and the committee to think that we didn't get feedback from families historically, but I think that probably wasn't as structured as it could have been, and it would have predominantly been the worker seeking that intervention seeking that feedback really. So we've looked to get the senior to do that, the senior family support worker doing that, really following the intervention to bring a level of sort of broadly independence to it really. And you can see at the bottom of 4.6, we're hoping, which would be quite significant really, for a sort of broadly 70% feedback on the intervention and outcomes there. And again, we can share that with the committee subsequently really in terms of the kind of qualitative data that comes back from that. But I think the important point, clearly we're looking to get that in terms of actually learning and adapting services where necessary. I've covered 4.8 in terms of the social care accolade. I'll draw colleagues and the committee to 4.11 if I can, because I think this is quite significant. There was a review undertaken between January 2022 and March 2022, where 170 rather families were receiving support. And I think this is significant, and this is something that we're working closely with colleagues in children's social care. Only 34 of them had previously been subject to care proceedings, and only one of those had engaged in any services such as Reflect or Rise, and 13, while still in proceedings, has already had their children removed from their care. So I think what we're trying to do is get upstream on that really, and trying to get those interventions in sooner, and then by definition, reducing the numbers of care experienced children. In terms of risks then, moving on to page 131, risks identified and forward look. Again, you'll be glad to know I won't be going through these verbatim, but we need to understand our needs and that needs assessment. So we're working with colleagues, as you can see in 4.13 of the report, in terms of issues around the easy collation and analysis of information to ensure that we're very clear in terms of where those emerging needs are. There's lots of work that happens anyway routinely around reviewing files of children who've become care experienced, and that's outlined for colleagues and the committee in 4.14. I'm sure this has been touched on, and colleagues in children's social care, I'm sure you've got the data. There's high numbers of children on the Child Protection Register, and there's work that we're undertaking with colleagues in children's social care to look at particular interventions with the aim of preventing children's needs escalating and then by definition requiring protection. So coming to the end now of my sort of summary, really taking you to 4.18 of the report, Educare Services. I've already mentioned the work that we're doing and have done for some time in terms of the voice of the child, young person and family, and work that we're doing there to strengthen the feedback arrangements, and also work that we're doing with colleagues in children's social care, which is entitled Shared Goals, around signs of safety and the rollout of that signs and safety model and support to implement any action plans then from the recent inspection. So taking you over to the financial implications section, whilst there are no financial implications arising from this report, I will take the committee back to it's a relatively small service. So we'll need continued investment really, particularly in those areas where broadly you've got that sort of invest to save sort of concept that bring around the following benefits that are highlighted there in those 3 bullet points that follow. And in summary then, Chair, the recommendation is for Cabinet Parenting Committee to consider the content of the report and to consider the continued investment in identifying really further proven models around interventions for this cohort of children and young people. So that's probably a summary from me. I'm conscious I went through it very quickly, but I'm sure the committee want the opportunity for questions, so I'll pause at that point, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, you and I have had various discussions around this. One thing that I'm very conscious of and would encourage all members to do is to share and advertise our recruitment issues, because nobody on this call is unaware of them. I am pleased to see that signs of safety is being implemented across the service. I think that's very important that we do it across children's and indeed early help. But I do need to invite members to comment. Are you happy to accept the report? And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor David?
Happy to move the report, the recommendations, Chair, Deputy Leader, and also just some questions for me, if I can, Chair. So, first of all, very interested in some of the developments, particularly the RISE service, which is a very new service, and I know it has only just been set up in the summer, and we can't expect the impact to be overnight, because it's about working with families over a longer time period. But I would be interested if we've had any feedback on the impact of the RISE programme, and if the very sad cases of repeated pregnancies amongst a very small group of mums that result in repeated cases of children being brought into care. And if I've understood it correctly, this programme is about trying to work with those parents to try and support them and try and change that. So that's my first question, and I was just gonna, and apologies if I missed it. I was really pleased to see that one of the nurses involved in the Baby in Mind service has been shortlisted for a prestigious UK award, and it states the result will be known in October. So that is certainly worthy of mention, and for the minute, I'm sure all colleagues would want to congratulate that nurse on reaching just that stage. Is an incredible achievement to be a finalist in the UK-wide awards for one of the best nurses in the UK. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor David. I'll go to Claire first because she has her hands up.
Chair, did you want answer on the leader's questions first? Because I had some sort of different points I wanted to highlight.
All right, okay. No, that's fine. Where have you gone, Mark?
I reappear with my mic muted. No, great. I'll pick up the second point first if I can. It was last week Leader the Awards. Unfortunately, she didn't get the final outcome, but I think, as you've indicated, really proud of getting to, within the list of finalists. So great, didn't get the final award or the final gong, but significant in terms of its acknowledgement of the work, really, and the intervention of health and the importance of that health intervention as part of that RISE project, and also the Baby in Mind arrangements as well. Alex, I'm going to ask you, put you on the spot, because you're going to be much closer to the detail than I, in terms of, obviously the question was around the leader, from the leader in terms of RISE. We got any sort of anecdotal or otherwise feedback that you can share in terms of how the service has been received in the last number of months?
Nothing as yet from the families directly, so we're working with 6 altogether parents at the moment. Very recently started working with them, but I think one of the things we've had feedback from professionals is that actually the RISE services is aware, because of the links with Educare Services, is aware of those families much quicker, so there's much more, we can get in a much more timely way to offer the support, as opposed to it being delayed before anyone gets any support. So far the feedback has been positive.
Lovely, thanks very much. Are you happy with those responses, Leader? Yeah, lovely, thanks very much. Claire?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Just a number of points from myself. I think the first one is just the importance of language, really, because Mark is Group Manager for Early Help. We talk about early help services. These are not early help services. These are Educare Services targeted at you know, points in a child and family's life when there is real risk that they're going to become care experienced. So you know, and really complex situations and family dynamics that are being managed and supported through the services which Alex manages. So just important around that. The next point I wanted to make was around the needs assessment. It's really important, isn't it? It's a really, you know, excellent set of services here that are described in terms of what they do. What the report doesn't tell you is where the gaps are in terms of the service offer that we have in Bridgend. You know, where are there perhaps waiting lists for services? These are some of the matters that are in the performance evaluation inspection from CIW, which Mark referred to, and the action plan that is being progressed to address those issues. And are there any gaps in terms of services which aren't in place at the moment? So Mark referred to the toxic trio. Integrated family support services are a model in terms of working with families there. And I think that's what we need to be bringing forward for this committee and for Cabinet in terms of that overarching needs assessment and commissioning strategy right across the piece. Because there are significant issues in Bridgend. So Mark referred, and the report refers to the Child Protection Register. The Child Protection Register is the highest ever in the history of this county borough. And when we look at comparative and benchmarking data compared with other authorities, perhaps who demographically might have even more needs than us, their registers are considerably lower, and their child cases open to care and support are lower as well. So we need that really deep dive into the range of interventions that we have which prevent the need for children to be registered in order to be protected, as Mark used that phrase. And that review of the operating model, which was referred to, and the Institute of Public Care supporting that review of that locality safeguarding and early help and edge of care model, is going to be a critically important piece of work for us in looking at how that integrated system works. Data and performance is the next point I would like to raise. There's reference in the report to WCCIS. WCCIS is a system which gets a lot of commentary. It's on our corporate risk register, but the system can be used more optimally than it is currently in Bridgend. And we've got to make sure that in terms of driving performance, data and information and understanding where we are against what good looks like, we've got to have a piece of work around that, haven't we? So those are the points that I wanted to make, Chair. You know, really good range of services. Where are the gaps? What is the need telling us? And how can we really impact in terms of the numbers on our register, the numbers of children and families open to care and support, because our overall strategy is about keeping children and families together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Mark, I am assuming that you want to pass comment on Claire.
Yeah, only just very quickly. So just for the record, I'm Group Manager Family Support. So that covers, it's not just early help, that covers a range of services, including Youth Justice Service and Educare Services, whereby it's, you know, tier 4 really support. So there's a range there. And just to reiterate what Claire said, absolutely, in terms of emerging need, looking to work very closely as we do with colleagues in children's social care in terms of where, you know, where there are those pockets, and I think we can identify in the report. So, for example, what I was indicating is the investment has quadrupled, hasn't it, around Trosgynnol, or TGP as they now. They just use the acronym now in terms of those family conferences. So there's a range of services like rise that met sort of new service needs, if you like, in that sense. But I think what we need to do, Chair, is to continue to invest in those and continue to work closely on what Claire talked about in terms of the commissioning strategy based on that needs assessment. So yeah, I just wanted those points of clarity, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. Mark Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I suppose to an extent this builds on what Claire was saying. The point I wanted to make is you will certainly be aware that the financial settlement or the potential financial settlement for next year looks very, very challenging. And I suppose that makes it even more important that we ensure that the services we deliver and the things we invest in are as effective as possible. So I suppose where I'm coming from is about our best use of resources, really, and whether in terms of what Mark has set out, and incidentally, congratulations to the team, there's an enormous number of excellent services there, but whether the way that we're currently addressing this matter makes the best use of a sort of a whole system approach, really, in terms of preventing escalation. I haven't got the answer to that, but it's a challenge, really. And I suppose what I was going to raise was, it says, I think in paragraph 4.16 about an independent review of or commissioned independent review of best practice into social care and edge of care. I just wondered whether Mark could perhaps tell me a little bit more about that and what might emerge from that, because I suppose we shouldn't be afraid of challenge, and we shouldn't be afraid of addressing, as Claire said, gaps, or indeed, if it's helpful, but not if it's not, looking at how best we form ourselves to respond to what are increasing challenges. So I suppose it's really about that independent review, and just a comment really on the broad piece that I've raised.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark. Mark, back to you.
Yeah, sure, happy. That's reference to the work that IPC have been commissioned, and I'm sure Claire can give a lot more detail than I on that. But we've worked closely with colleagues in children's social care, met IPC colleagues in terms of both the delivery model that Mark is talking about, which certainly the feedback I've had to date has been positively received. But you know, like any service, it needs to evolve and change to meet emerging needs. So the references to the IPC Commission, and we're very much part of that. Claire might be closer to the detail in terms of the reporting timeframes for that and the recommendations contained therein.
Yeah, so IPC have been appointed as an improvement partner for us in Bridgend around the work that we do with children and families. So that the first piece of work they were commissioned to do for us as part of that framework was to review our front door set of arrangements, and obviously we've got a number of front doors in the council. That report, the detailed interim report, is being considered at lunchtime today by our corporate management board. The next stage of their work with us then is to look at how we operate in localities, and we've got a locality model, haven't we, from both the children's social care and an early help perspective in the county borough. And I think the context for that review is the context I set out, really, unprecedented contacts into the council, unprecedented levels of need, which is currently being managed through the register and through very, very high levels of children and families open to care and support. So I think the challenge, and to go to Mark's point, really, Mark Shepherd's point, is, you know, is that the best way of arranging and organising and delivering the support that children and families clearly need? And what IPC will bring to the table is examples from elsewhere about where perhaps things have been managed differently. And as I say, I do look at benchmarking data that is available, and you see some authorities on the face of it with higher sort of levels of wards on the deprivation indices than Bridgend, but then numbers of children and families who are supported in those statutory parts of services are considerably lower. And that's not something that could change overnight, but it's something I think we need as a council and with partners a clear vision around, and a clear set of integrated arrangements and integrated system to support the delivery of. So the first phase report is almost there. The next phase will really get into the work within localities, Chair.
Thank you very much, Claire, for the clarity around that. I do need a second member. A second member to second the report, please.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Good. Do we have any other questions, please? No. So the only other item left on my agenda is any urgent items, which I haven't been advised of. So thank you very much, everyone, for all your contributions this morning. Keep safe and well.